Hello guys, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about one of the most important things, which is pretty important, which is database. I'm going to talk about SQL, what is database, SQL versus NoSQL, and let's get started, right? So imagine, right, you own a small pizza shop, right? Every day you have customers, they order pizzas. So you need to remember their names, their phone numbers, how many pizzas they ordered, how much they paid, right? And when they ordered, right? Now imagine you have 10 customers. You could probably write everything in a notebook. But what happens when you have 10,000 customers? You definitely don't want thousands of sticky notes lying around your shop. That's where database comes in, right? So database is simply an organized place where we store information, right? So think about contacts app on your phone. You may have the name, phone number. So your phone needs somewhere to store all this information. That storage system is essentially a database. Another example is the most popular, platform on the planet Earth, YouTube. So YouTube needs to store information about users, videos, comments, likes, subscribers, playlists, right? And so on. Imagine trying to manage all of that inside Excel. It would become crazy very quickly. So databases are designed to store huge amounts of information and allow applications to find, add, update, delete that information very quickly. So the simplest definition of database is, it's an organized collection of information. Now many databases, right, they organize information using something called table, right? And luckily tables are very easy to understand. Think about your school attendance, right? So you'll have something called student ID, you'll have name, age, class, right? This is exactly how many databases store information. The entire thing is called table. Each vertical section is called a column. For example, name is a column, age is a column, class is a column, and each horizontal line is called a row. Like example I'm taking, right? Harrison Ford 5A, right? Something like that, right? Just an example, right? A row represents one complete record, right? So if you understand a spreadsheet, you're already halfway understanding what a database is. Now, the important thing comes in, what is SQL, right? So it stands for Structured Query Language, right? So don't worry about memorizing that immediately, right? The important thing is SQL is a language we use to communicate with database. Now imagine our database has 10,000 customers. We could ask, show me all customers in SQL. We will write a command like, a single line of code, select star from customer, something like that. Or we might say, show me the customer called Sarah. So database searches through the information and give us answers. We can also tell the database that, add a customer, update this customer's phone number, delete this customer. So you can think of SQL like giving instructions to very organized librarian, right? You ask like, please find me this information, and SQL helps the database understands your request. And the developers often call this, as a CRUD operation where, you create, read, update, delete, right? We'll talk about it more the upcoming videos, but this is just an introduction. Another thing I also want to make you clarify if there is something called as SQL versus NoSQL. You will hear a lot. So NoSQL, so what's the difference, right? Let's keep this extremely simple. Imagine you are organizing toys, right? With traditional SQL database, you might have label boxes. One box says, let's say, car, another box says, doll, another says building blocks. Everything has a clear structure. SQL database normally organizes information into tables with rows and columns, right? So examples include MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and Oracle database, right? Now imagine another room where different toys are stored in different shape and containers. So some toys have batteries, some have wheels, some have 10 accessories, some only have one. The information isn't always exactly the same way, right? That's where NoSQL database can be useful. Instead of forcing everything into databases, uh, traditional tables, NoSQL database can store information in other formats. One popular format quite widely uses the MongoDB, which stores information as document like structures, right? So the easiest way to remember is SQL is structured with tables with rows and columns. SQL and NoSQL is more flexible with ways of storing data. Does that mean one is better? No. They solve different problems, and every application, every requirement is different. So we're going to focus on SQL in this particular video in the series as well. In When we talk about MySQL, right? I've seen a lot of folks confused about it. So SQL and MySQL are not the same thing. SQL is the language, right? And MySQL is a database management system. So think about English. English is a language, right? Microsoft Word is a tool where you can write English. So in similar way, SQL is the language. MySQL is one of the system that understands SQL. And there are different other systems that understand SQL too, like PostgreSQL, right? SQL Server, Oracle. And also wanted to let you know, during this SQL series, I'm going to use MySQL Workbench. Uh, you know, it's very easy. You can install it if you are using a Windows system or a Mac system. Straightforward. I'll not go into the installation part for this, so it's pretty straightforward. So inside MySQL Workbench will be able to create database, create tables, write queries, etc. Everything, the operation we're going to do, together. So a quick recap, right? Database we use MySQL is to manage the database, right? SQL is to ask question and give instruction to the database. A MySQL Workbench is the visual application where we write and execute SQL commands. That's the entire picture, right? So, and that's all you need to understand before you start writing your SQL query. In the next video, we'll see how, we can go more detail into the other topics, and, I will see you in the next one. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for your time.